have some of my covers here that I just have as examples of like some of the things I've done for Poison Ivy. So I've worked with Poison Ivy now for like 2.5, 3 years. And I think we just released issue 24, and 25 is coming out in a couple days. So I have cover 1, I think this is 9, and then like 10 is over here. So I wanted to show like a little bit of a splattering of like different types of styles and approaches to like the way I've done some of the covers. Because one of the comments I get a lot is that the covers are consistent in some ways, but like they're very, very different from one to the next. So I just wanted to kind of show that difference here with some of these. So let me just go down here. Oh man, you cannot see that. Alrighty. So some of the tools that I brought with me here, I don't do a ton of traditional stuff anymore just because I'm getting older and I haven't been taking as much care of my wrist and arm as I should be. So some of these things, good. Okay. But some of these things are things that I still use or things that I recommend. And you can tell I've got like my little sleeve to make things smoother, and I have like a elbow and like other like wrist braces and stuff back home. So for traditional stuff, I have like the Pentel brush pen, and I always recommend this one. I carry this one with me, and it has like the replaceable cartridges inside. So this is like my go-to pen for everything. Sketches. I do a lot of like final drawings in this too. And then the High-Tech C pen. The High-Tech C pen, this is such a fine line. I really recommend this if you're an artist who really likes fine, thin, like if your sketch style is very scratchy too, like this just feels good in the hand to use. Okay, and then the Moleskine book, you can use anything. I just prefer the Moleskines because I'm a little bit of a like bibliophile. Like I like being able to have something that feels good in my hands. Like I'm definitely one of those like artists who is very much affected by like my environment and what I use. Like if like my space is not clean, if the things I don't use don't feel well or good, then that affects like how I feel about my drawing and how I'm working with it. Okay, and then I did bring Bristol paper with me, but I don't think I'm going to use that. I think I'm just going to work with the Moleskine. And, okay, so I did bring one of these. This is a metal everlasting pencil. So these ones you never have to sharpen. It's a metal tip. It works just like a pencil. It has nice lines that can be erased. You just don't need to sharpen or worry about it. So this is also a go-to travel pencil for me. And then I have the kneaded eraser, pretty standard, little rubber, no, trash to have to pick up. Okay, and then I'm gonna go over these really quick. This is like more of my digital side. So I work primarily digital now just because it's easier on my hand. So I use Procreate, Clip Studio, Blender, and DAWs for like setting up figures in like 3D environments sometimes if I'm really struggling with something or I just need something quick to look at for lighting or form. SketchUp, same thing, like just to set up 3D sets and stuff like that. So you can look those up and see if any of those work for you. Like mine have been a lot of like trial and error and hearing from other peers what they use. Some things don't work well with me. Like I don't use Blender all that often. I dabbled in 3D for a little bit, but it's definitely not my wheelhouse. So I only use it for little things. And then I have Texture Lab. And if you want to like snapshot those, these ones that I have listed here for the photo ref, true ref, reference angle, the pose archives, these are all photo reference places where you can download packs of like poses with like nice lighting. And these are all, ones that once you buy them, you have the license to freely use them however you want. So like this is like quintessential to having on your visual library. So you can look some of those up. Some of them are really cool. Some of them are very new. I think TrueRef They just started, and their photo reference packs are beautiful. If you have a chance to like look at that. I also had Art Bee here and Public Work. So these are just massive repositories of art that has the common license now. So anybody can use them. Anybody can, they're free to the public to use. So these Art Bee and Public Work, they have paintings, sculptures, textures. It's I think a not well utilized art source for like a lot of digital artists. So definitely have a look at that. And then I use PureRef. PureRef just lets me organize my references, my pictures, while I'm working on the computer. I have like usually a setup of like, the setup I have now is 2 monitors. So I'll have all of my references up on 1 monitor, and I'll have all of my emails and communications that I don't ever look at on the other monitor. And then I have my drawing tablet down in front of me. So if people aren't really super familiar with my own personal work, I did get my bachelor's degree in studio art because I thought I would become a gallery artist. That pathway did not work out for me. I did not want to become a gallery artist. So then I went into like game development, indie development for a little bit. That also kind of fizzled out. I wasn't like feeling that. It was very time intensive. If anybody here has done game development or is in game development, you know. It is rough. So I moved then into doing like tangentially into games. So I went into like working for Magic the Gathering and like Marvel Snap. So it's still related to games, but more illustrated focus. And let's see here. Okay, and then comics. Comics is interesting because originally the artwork that I did prior to working on Poison Ivy, it was all like my own personal work. And I put that personal work into a fantasy collection. I don't know if people know Spectrum. Spectrum is like a compilation book of like fantasy and sci-fi artwork and illustrations for like a year. And then they'll give those books to like art directors. I don't think they print this book anymore, but they would give it to art directors. And one of the editors at DC Comics was looking through that book and saw one of my personal pieces and thought that my style and how like I approach themes would work really well for Poison Ivy. And then they reached out to me. So I have here, on the left is like one of my own personal pieces. It's like this woman's body turning into a snake, and it has all this like fauna and flora around her. And then I have one of the other Poison Ivy covers to the right here, where like some of those similar themes. Oh yeah, if you have trypophobia, maybe don't look. What? I just wanted to like touch on some of the themes that I tend to like go back to a lot, just so you can kind of understand my work a little bit better. So I really like dichotomy. So differences between 2 opposing things. So things that are good or bad, pretty, ugly, that kind of thing. And then finding like a weird in between, like the nuances between those 2 things. And I'll skip the second point. Here, enlarge it. I'll skip the second point for now. But a really important thing is like the idea of the sublime. So in Romanticism, there's this idea of the sublime where things are so awe and wondrous that they kind of go past the logical, like they're just unbelievable. And so there's different types of the sublime. There's like the terribly sublime or the terror sublime. So things that are so wondrous and out there and like cosmic horror, it's hard to understand them. It's beautiful, but yet it's disturbing and threatening at the same time. And Romanticism, if you go look at like a lot of paintings from that era, they have this, like they're very, very dark, they'll have scenes of like murder and, they'll be very violent, but the way that they're depicted is very beautiful. Like the way the lighting hits the figures and how they tell the story with dark and light. So it's a very beautiful image to look at, even if it's disturbing, themes. So I really like that in a lot of my work. And I think that has also kind of transcended the themes that I work with. It also like goes into the things that I like to draw. So I love drawing decay or like rot, but I also equally love drawing things that are cute and beautiful. And that has helped me a lot, I think, in my career, because I apply that to like every project, and any project that needs like story building or world building, I feel like I'm able to kind of adapt to any of those projects because I'm free and like open to kind of move between all these different, themings and genres. That's not to say that I don't have preferences. I do prefer to like work with things that have to do with the cosmic horror, or like things that have to do with transformation of the body. And I do really like storytelling. So if it's a very personal story to somebody, if they're telling a story about their life, how they grew up, some trauma that they've been through, I tend to like gravitate towards those projects too. And I think that's why I really gravitated to Poison Ivy. I do want to say too that Poison Ivy was my first job into comics. And when they told me the direction that they were going, the editor was Ariana Turturro, and she was like, this is going to be a Poison Ivy that we haven't really done before. It's going to be cosmic horror, there's going to be body horror, there's going to be dark themes, existential crisis. It's going to get pretty dark, and I was sold. Like I was like, say no more. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea like who I am and like how I like to approach projects. One thing I did want to mention to you is I really do like little moments and environmental storytelling. So I didn't bring it with me. I don't think I did. Oh no, I did. Oh, it's right there. So I did two covers for Night Terrors. And the Night Terrors issues, they revolved around Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. And they're living in this like Stepford housewife kind of environment gone bad. And they were like, you love little storytelling moments, go ham on this one. So, there's like Ivy cooking her own like head in a pot on the TV. And there's like, I have little birds, and like the dishes all have like these rotting insects, and the head, as the main course, and the little crying Ivy heads. So like, I do love this type of storytelling, and usually this type of stuff is reserved for interior illustrations, right? Because like when you're reading a book or you're reading a comic, you have time to look at the panels or look at the illustrations inside. So your eyes like wander, and you can look at all the little narrative beats. But for covers, usually they're like one beat. Like you look at this cover and it's her ripping her chest open. There's not like a whole lot narratively going on. It's just one moment being captured. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that like a lot of covers will kind of do this. They have like pinups or a single figure or one prime figure with like all the other characters around them. But sometimes you do get projects that let you have some creative freedom. Okay, so before I like start doing some drawing, I did want to show a little bit of my process behind the scenes. So these, the projects that I work for, a lot of times they ask for 3 sketches. And they have to be 3 distinct different sketches. There isn't like they're always like more is better, but I tend to stick to the minimum 3, and I would stick to even less if I could. But so these are some sketches that I did for some Poison Ivy covers. I don't know how well those come up, but like hopefully you can see that. They're all like usually black and white. This one I did more than 3. I learned my lesson after this one. So I did a whole bunch of different sketches, and I primarily work in 3 values. So you have the lightest color, and then the mid value, and then things that are very like dark and black. Like I'll use big blocks of black to kind of delineate like space and like what's important. So yeah, I'll do the black and white sketches, and then I will also give them a set of colored, very, very quick color wash sketches, just so that they can see what the possibilities are for some of those black and white sketches. Because I have seen like every artist I think approaches this process differently. I've seen some sketches where it's like I have no idea what you're trying to tell me. Like, the sketch will just be 6 lines. Like, here's the figure, and they're up in the sky, and that's it. There's no values, there's no, like, idea of, like, where compositional elements are, or, like, where the focus is, really. It's just telling, hey, I've got an idea, and it's on the page. But whereas, like, I tend to want to be a little bit more, I want to give them more detail, because I want, at least for my team with Poison Ivy, I feel like our whole team feels this way. We want to inspire each other. So when I give my editors and the writer and, you know, the other artists, everybody sees this on my team too. We all see each other's work through our emails. So like, I want to give them options. I want to see, like, what does it look like in a cool lighting, a warm lighting, in a very dark space, light space. You know, and each of these, you know, to tell them, like, the way that I'm going to approach the lighting, it's going to tell a very different story. Like with this is so much more intense with the warms and the more saturated, like, colors. And that's gonna, people who are looking at the cover for the first time, it's gonna give them, you know, a vibe of what the comic's gonna be about. So I don't want to mess that up, like, with my writers. Okay. And yeah, I just have some other color sketches there, just so you can see. And then the one that they picked, there was the final one. So yeah, you can see all of my, like, the terribly sublime down there, with all the fungal taking over all these bodies on the floor. But the one thing I really wanted to capture first was, like, that window with Ivy, since she's so focal to this issue. And I have some other examples too of, like, starting with that sketch, giving them different colored options. I'm not going to go too much into art theory, but, like, high key, low key images, like how contrast works in your pieces. I'll play with that a little bit too sometimes. Something very dark and contrasted like this gives a very moodier feel, I feel, than something like this. This feels more ethereal, ghostly. Yeah, and okay, so here's an example of, sometimes if I have time, I'll put together a little 3D model. I'll go into Clip Studio, use their tools in there, make just a quick pose, just so I have something to reference as I'm working. And yeah, I have the final one here with them, with all, like, the fungal growths coming out of Ivy. And then there's, like, that little moment where she's touching the necklace that's representative of, like, Harley and Ivy's, you know, love for one another. I wanted to include this image too, because a lot of people have asked me sometimes why the covers are positioned and composed in a certain way. For me, I know some covers, like, will move the dressings around, like the title, the price, the author, you know, who's written it. But for Poison Ivy, it's been consistent. They do not change where the logo is. So I have to be really cognizant of, like, where my focus is and what's getting covered and what's not getting covered. So, like, things that you might know in traditional art of, like, what makes a good composition, sometimes it has to be adapted to, like, okay, well, what makes a good composition for the restrictions and the constraints of the project that I'm being given. So, like, yeah, I have a set, like, template file that has everything positioned out. So when I go to do my sketches, I'm like, okay, I can at least remember that certain things are not going to be able to have detail shown or any narrative stuff shown. So I just wanted to show that, like, something I think about when I'm composing. And I had this one here just because I wanted to show, there were 2 sketches that they really liked and they wanted both of them combined, which is, like, a really frequent edit. They're like, we like both of these things, we can't decide, so we're going to leave it to you to figure out how to put them together. So they really liked her expression in this one and how, you know, her hair is put up, but they really liked the setting of her in an office and sitting down. And so there's my little 3D mock-up. Like, it doesn't have to be pretty. It's just to tell me, like, okay, filing cabinet there, desk here, like, that's pretty much it. That's all I need. And then this was the final that they went with. So yeah, and then they have a little human resources title card there. And okay, I know that this is like comic cover like panel, but I wanted to just touch on these two other covers that I did, just to like bring home that fact of the dressing really affects what your composition is going to be. So like for this one just got announced. So this is a literature novel, a young adult novel, and I did the image, and they were very keen on like what was supposed to be seen on a tiny 5x7 book on a bookshelf. So for them, it's like, we don't really care about small narrative moments. We don't really like care about it being very compositionally, complicated or anything like that. We just need it to read really well on a shelf. So I tried to really do that with them, and then they had their designer come in with like the text and everything later. And then this one here, this was for like a literature magazine. So for this one, this was a different crowd. This would never hit the bookshelves. Their magazine was only promoted online. So people who got to see the image, they got to see it for a little longer. Like it still needed to have a focal point, but like all this extra detail, like with the photos of these ancestors and this spirit that this girl and mother are like praying to, all these little details, like this may not have really flown with this project. I don't think they would have approved having all of those little details, because just nobody would see them on a bookshelf cover. So this team worried about book being seen on Barnes & Noble's shelf. And this one is more concerned with somebody comes across the image online, how do we keep them looking at the thing online? So different approaches. Yes, yeah, marketing. And it's the same with Poison Ivy. We struggle a little bit because our team is very artsy. we really love like dark painterly covers. We love like, the old master painters. And sometimes some of that stuff just does not translate well to a comic that's going to be on a shelf. Like if you've seen a lot of like comic covers, you obviously know they're very saturated, very bright a lot of the times. And they use like certain key colors that you would find most common between like comics next to each other. So like this one, oh man, we struggled with this one to get this one approved. Because the higher ups were like, it's too dark. Nobody's gonna be able to like know what's going on. It's just not gonna stand out on a shelf. And our team fought very hard. They were like, but we think the people who like Poison Ivy and what we're trying to do with it now, we think that they will like this type of cover. So we stuck to it, and I guess it worked. So that's my little presentation there. I did want to show this because it hasn't been shown yet. This is like a little special thing. They just announced not that long ago a new Green Lantern, and her name's Rena Mori, and she uses like an actual lantern that has like a green flame inside of it. So I wanted to show that one because I think the thumbnails for this one were like really cool. So we have like Rena here with this portal gateway with all these monsters coming out of it, just a bunch of teeth and limbs and like fleshy bits. And we had another one here where I tried to be a little bit more poignant and like a little bit more like psychological with this one. So we have Rena with like her lantern, and she's surrounded by all this darkness that's kind of closing in. And then this one, which was her playing with like the little green fireflies that come out of her lantern. And then, like I said, I like to add color to the sketches, just give them idea of like what the mood could be. And they ended up going with this one. So this is the work in progress. I'm still working on this one. So yeah, that's my little presentation. Hopefully that was like, I don't know, some good info there and good to know a little bit. Before I take a couple questions and then I'll move to like doing some little demo things. I brought the hardcover, the first trade with me just because in the back, I don't like see it all that often, but in the back of the first trade cover, they kind of do this with the ones after, but they have like some of like the concept art in the back. And then they had an interview with all of the team. So if you're ever interested in like the pipeline process, like how the writers go from writer, editor to artists, this is really cool to read. Like they talk about why they chose this project, what they think of nature and the themes in Poison Ivy. And then in the back, they have all of my sketches. So you can like see the sketches, my thoughts, and you can see sometimes we get a little too crazy, a little too much sometimes. But I think it's interesting to see how things have changed over the course of working on Poison Ivy. Like how I worked with the team and how I drew a year in is much different than how I draw to them now. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly show that. So I could take some like questions if people have any. Yeah.
Question. So for when you're drawing covers, like the characters, do you give us the writers, like how they want the characters to look, or do you reference other comic books?
Okay, so do I reference other comic books or like do the writers tell me certain things on like how the characters should look? So for this certain project, Marzio, he's the interior artist. He did all of the concepts for Poison Ivy's new look and like some of the other characters, and I get access to those. And then for the script, the writer, everybody gets access to the script in whatever form it's in. And I get to see them work through the sketches, the colors, the text. So I kind of guess we just get to like tell each other how things look. We don't reference a ton of other comics just because I think they really wanted to contain this one to what it is. So like I don't know. I think it's more fun this way than we get to be like a big brainstorm think tank. Yeah. Is there another question? Anything? Oh, yeah.
So for going into the reading and insurance series, do the artists or the people behind it, do they search you out, or is it like you have to pitch yourself to be on this new series?
So do they like search for me for certain projects like the Green Lantern, or do I have to pitch to them? In this case, they pitched to me. I worked with this editor before, Andrea Shea. I worked with her before on Spirit World, and I guess she was picking up a new project, Green Lantern. So then she reached out to me asking if I would do a cover for it. I'm not really sure. So this is where my inexperience comes in. So I've only been in comics for like 2.5 years or so now. And I guess once I started doing covers, they kind of have you in a directory of available artists. And then they'll reach out to you if they need like a variant cover or a main cover. And from what I've heard, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but like a lot of editors, they talk to one another, and they'll be like, hey, I worked with this really cool artist and I see that they're available for, between December and February. Do you want to book them? So like, I think a lot of the projects that I've gotten at least have been through word of mouth. Yeah. Any other? Yeah.
When you're doing a composition or you're sketching out a composition, how do you decide where the local will be and what the surrounding detail will be?
Okay, so when I'm putting together a composition, how do I choose what the focal points will be and what the surrounding stuff will be instead? So I am a little bit meticulous in this way in that I like having as much information and references as I can. So I'll have the writer's script, I'll pick out the key points. So they're like, if this is a story about Poison Ivy's origin, obviously Poison Ivy is going to be the forefront. Whereas I think there was one cover, there's a cover where Harley and Ivy are in a swamp and they're like, yeah, they're clinking glasses together. And for that cover, I remember specifically the script was very much like a big part of this is going to be the swamp surrounding Gotham City. So that ended up being a much bigger force in that composition than Harley and Ivy in the middle. But I tend to look narratively like what's important, and I'll focus on those things. And then from there, I like branch out. So like if it's Ivy and she, I'll just use this one. Okay, so for this one, they really wanted Poison Ivy to be focused because she's making a comeback. This is her series, so she's got to be the main focal point. And then they were like, another big thing is she's got to be eating meat. So we have, I have like this really well rendered meat on the bottom there. So that needed to be a big focus. So I had them, very front and center. And then they were like, everything else, we just wanted to give the vibe of being macabre and that there's this fungal madness going on. We don't really need to see if there's anything distinct going on, but that's like the vibe that we really want. So I ran with that. I'm like, okay, well, mushrooms, plants taking over bodies. If you see the full size image of this piece, that's all going on in the background, but it's pushed back so that it kind of just gives like this frame around Poison Ivy. But it still gives the vibe of being like madness and plants. And so like, yeah, I try to think about narratively what's important, and then everything else comes later, and then I'll find references. And I'm a little bit of I think I like to experiment around a lot, which kind of drives my editors a little crazy sometimes. I think this is definitely the studio art side of me coming through. Like I love finding accidents and playing around with things. So like okay, well, what if the character was completely a shadow? Or like what if what if I changed the camera angle instead of like being straight on all the way down? Like I despise myself for the one image of
You sound like Orson Welles filming Citizen Kane.
Okay.
That's the laptop.
Somebody want to like just poke it? Okay, let me just see here. What did I do? I think it was the very first image. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of regret giving them this sketch. So originally they were like, we want Ivy and this character to be walking through a super healthy food store. And the two images I sent them, the first two thumbnails, were pretty basic. Like it was just them walking through an aisle through a grocery store, at different angles. And then I was like, well, what if you could like see them through one of the security mirrors, in the store? So I gave them that sketch too. And I should have known they would pick that one. I should have known. But so they picked that one, and I tried a number of different things. Like some people were like, just 3D model it. Some people were like, just do all the perspective lines. I'm not one of those people. I really like going out and getting references for myself. So instead, I went to the grocery store and took a whole bunch of pictures of my sister and me and, like in the security mirrors. So I used those as my references. And that's the same with like a lot of my other work too. Like all of these like plants and other things, like on my computer, I've subtly built a very big Poison Ivy visual library, like of photographs that I've taken while I'm just out on walks or like when I travel. Yeah, so I don't know if other people also do that. Like you just see art everywhere and you just have to take a little bit of it back with you. And there's still stuff, like I've taken pictures from probably like 10 or 15 years ago that I still bring up and use in some of my like current work. So, yeah.
What was one of like the most creatively challenging pieces that you've created, but you were very good?
Creatively challenging ones that I've done that I'm glad that I did. A Poison Ivy, I'm I don't know if there's one that was particularly challenging in that like I was like pulling out my hair or anything like that. I guess if I had stuck with game development, I might have done okay because I do like to problem solve. Like one of my favorite things was visual development, like figuring out, concept art and storyboarding. So there isn't actually a lot that I ever feel challenged by, like that I would struggle and like, pull hair out. But I don't think there's one that like, I don't know. Every single one of these has posed a different problem. And I think that's interesting to me. I like projects and art pieces that do that to me, which is why I think each of these covers stands so distinctly, is because each one of these had their own set of problems, issues, narrative, like constraints. So yeah, I don't know if I could give you a good answer on that one. Yeah.
Is there a site that you could like post your portfolio on that professionals would like go to often to search for artists?
I can't really give a good recommendation because whatever you decide to use as your portfolio is something that you should stick with. Or you have like multiple versions of a portfolio that you would give to different clients. Like, so I have a very distinct portfolio for what I would send to like tabletop game companies versus a comic company versus game development. So that's kind of nice to have very distinct portfolios to give different people. Most of my work is honestly like, once you reach a certain point, I think at least where I am right now, most of my stuff is on like LinkedIn. So like they can see who I've worked with and they reach out to those people to be like, did you actually have a good time working with Jessica? Like, is she actually like, did she do her work well? So at that point, it becomes more of like references and them searching out who you've worked with. So yeah, keeping up with like a portfolio site, making sure it's like tailored to whoever you're applying to, and then making sure like when people can find your work and who you've already done work for, that it's stuff that you're proud of. And then, if they were to go looking, then, yeah, they wouldn't find a problem. Okay, yeah.
Working at DC, are you considered full-time or freelance? Like, how's the pay structure?
Freelance,
Freelance?
yeah. Even though I'm in their directory, and it's Disney kind of works the same way. Once you've done work for Disney, you're in their supplier directory. So anybody from Disney could then pull your name if they need something from you. But that doesn't guarantee anything. Like that's just your name in a directory. So it's still considered freelance.
Do they pay you like per cover or is it like for sets of comics?
Per cover for me. And it ranges wildly. Like I just talked to Maria Wolf. I don't know if people know Maria. She does beautiful pen and ink covers. I think she just did a bunch of stuff for like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And she was telling me like for some covers she gets paid like, like $250 to $600. Whereas like you'll hear some artists get paid from like $600 to $1,500 to $2,000, depending on just how long they've worked there and how much experience they have. But yeah, it's usually per cover. And it does, if people aren't aware, it is different for interior artists. I believe interior artists and writers and stuff like that, I think they get royalties from the sales. I think that's right though. I think they do
What
get
is an interior artist?
Oh, they do like the sketching for the panels and the inking of the panels. Yeah. Yeah. It's not very much, which is why I've seen like so many artists selling their originals, because you can sell your original panel from a comic for like 300 or 400. Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. I know that this is only meant to really go for an hour. I can get a couple more questions in, but I do want to show just like some little tricks of how I like sketch. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. There is some resources that we were looking earlier after the movies. I didn't catch the list of resources that you showed earlier after the school.
Oh, the
But
resources.
the screen is gone, so
Oh, afterwards you can come up to me and I'll show you.
another question I had is like you mentioned about like they're sublime, they're like beautiful but disturbing in a way. Have you heard of Junji?
Can somebody?
He's asking if you've heard of Junji Ito.
Oh yeah, I love Junji Ito. I love Junji Ito's work. He's the one artist that I will fully support, but cannot buy any of his books because I can't have them on the bookshelf because I get too scared. But yeah, I love his line work. Yeah. Yeah.
Will be a quick question. Do you have a wish list of characters you would love to develop a canvas for?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have a big wish list of things that I would like to do. Like I secretly I've kind of wanted to do something for R.L. Stine because he's working on like all that new stuff that's coming out and nostalgia. It's like, oh, that's just such a good crossover of my childhood and now. I also love any characters that have to do with like the spiritual or the cosmic horror. So like I love Swamp Thing. I'd love to do something for Swamp Thing. And Scarlet Witch was really nice. I was really shocked to get that one. Yeah, I don't know. And Constantine, I love Constantine. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of characters. Yeah. Okay. All right. I do want to like just this is very brief. I'm so sorry. I did not know how much time I would have and how much that I get to do. But I did want to show like a little bit of like the way that I sketch on the go. So the way that I work, it's like a combination of having some general ideas of like what I like a general form on the page. And then from there, going like a little bit of automatic drawing. So if people aren't like familiar with automatic drawing, it's just kind of letting your hand and brain kind of go into off mode and draw whatever comes to you on the paper. And you can do a little bit of like unguided, being random, and then switching back to like finding some forms in there to clean up and tidy up, and then going back to seeing if there's like a happy accident that could happen. So I'll do like a little bit of that. It's going to be really messy. And this is most of my sketches when I sketch traditional. They're awful. But like I said, I keep a very big visual library. So even the awful stuff I'll scan and keep in my like files, and I'll always call back to it. And I want to also like say, I can't show it here because it's so quick. But like when I do a lot of my artworks too, I'll grab from past drawings or like past pictures I've taken and take like crops of like a really nice brush stroke that I did, or like a nice, part of a flower that I drew. I'll cut out that and then, see how it looks in this new painting that I'm working on that it could be used in. So like I don't know, I'm a little bit a wild card that way. So I'll draw a little bit here, and if people want to like draw something too, I'm going to do something floral. And if people want to draw along for a little bit, we can just take like a breather during the convention. So I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to see here, but I have to like move over. I'm going to like not talk for a little bit. I also want to say that a lot of my studies in college were with Chinese paintings. So I really like brush strokes, being a little bit free with like how the ink flows onto the paper, not being so controlled all the time. So like sometimes I just like the brush strokes to do what they want. You can always edit things later too. So, you know, a mistake is a mistake. And this is some of the stuff that like my editor and stuff, like this is, we send each other stuff like this all the time, where it's weird, surreal, and we're like, I don't know, I feel like that really fits with a lot of like Poison Ivy's aesthetic for the current the current series. So we'll send like weird stuff like this to each other. We're like, oh, I really like the eyeball in the middle of this, or like I really like the tentacles coming out of this and that. And that sometimes influences what goes into our future covers and stuff like that. So like it's a fun process. And I think if you're gonna go into, you know, comics, games, tabletop, there's like a level of degree of like having fun with the creative process that I don't know. I like it. Some people just see a job as a job, but like I can't see it that way. So I'm just gonna do a couple things here just to like give it some texture. But I like to fill sketchbooks with this kind of stuff because this is things like right now, like I'm just sitting with all of you, you know, putting together something silly, something fun, something that just gets the hand moving and gets the brush stroke going. Because I feel like this might be a problem for a lot of people too, is the hardest part is just starting something. So like this, I have no real attachment to. I'm just like, I know I really love petals. I love floral elements. I like adding a little bit of the macabre in there. So it's just kind of like, well, I wonder if, you know, you saw how I started. There's a bunch of petals and I'm like, oh, I want the eye in the middle, but I really wanted to have all these roots and tentacles that come out the bottom, you know, and it might look really dumb right now, but like, what if I revisit this guy, you know, 2 or 3 iterations down and he turns into some, you know, nice sprite for a game or a, you know, a book, a comic book that I want to do, you know, so like, there's a little bit of that game developer in me who's like, I want to see, you know, what 5 or 6 iterations down of this thing might look like. Yeah, and if anybody has sketchbooks that are like filled with this kind of thing, I would really recommend scanning some of them and just putting like a block of color or a wash of color just to see what it looks like. Because I think you'll find that a lot of your ideas that you've done on the fly or sketches that you think didn't have a lot going on, they might actually be good practices to use for other things. Like for this piece, I mean, I'll do it now. It's gonna stink really bad. I'm so sorry for the first people here in these robes. Like, I will live and die by this pen. It's a Sharpie Pro. These pens are meant to be like used on pipes and stuff like that. So it's a very, very dark pen. But I really love this because as soon as this hits the, you can do this with Sharpie too, but as soon as this hits the paper, that's it. Like, you can't go back. And it's fun to be like, well, here's this character on a very light background, but like, what if I went in and just added, a graphic element to it and, brought back in like a little bit of a frame to it. Like, a lot of people will do this with big washes of color. They'll use like red, yellow, to make something really pop. And sometimes that's all people need to see their artwork look different. Like, they just want to see their artwork pop off the page in different ways. And, like, I'm not attached to this piece. So if I accidentally color too close, color wrong, And I really like the cutout process because this lets me like think about the negative, positive space, cutting things out just to see like what might be interesting there. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It smells pretty bad. And I don't have my white pen or anything like that, but like, play around, like go back in with wash paints or use metallic paints, put some like little specks of, gold petals, gold, like dust in the air, add a little bit of something to the sketches. And yeah, having fun with it. I know this is not like a figural sketch or anything like that. It's just me making a little creature, but this is how a lot of my sketches end up going in my traditional work. Yeah.
So when you do like color washing, so like basically paint the negative spaces like the negative spaces around the camera and then you get pop. Is that what color washing?
Like you can just like a coloring book, like if you filled in your lines for your figure and you made that pop off the page. So like if you had your creature and you filled him with just one wash of red, how he would pop off the page differently than if you don't paint the character at all and just paint the background red and see how it pops off the page differently. And then, just seeing like how you can play with push and pull. And that goes with everything. Like how you can push and pull color, push and pull form, push and pull value, push and pull what's big and small. Like, I know like I'm a broken record about it, but I really love dichotomy. Like, seeing two extremes of something and then finding the nuances in between. And oops, I get this question a lot of like the kind of brush I use in Procreate. I just wanted to show my face. I basically use one brush. And I just wanted to show this brush because it's the one that I feel, where's my iPad? Oh, there it is. So I mainly use, this one brush. Okay. So I use this brush mostly, I use it for everything, coloring, line work. It's It's very like painterly, textured. I tend to like, I know a lot of artists will use like the soft brushes or like the hard brushes. I'm not that way. I really like brushes that have a bit of texture to it. Either it simulates, an actual brush with the strands and everything, or an oil paint. Yeah, so I just wanted to show that I know I can't do like a lot of demo stuff here today, but I wanted to show this one because I feel like it very nicely simulates what I like about a lot of Chinese painting and how you use the brush. I was very hesitant about switching to digital for that reason. Like I like the feel of how the brush feels under like on the paper. So yeah, I just wanted to show that. And there's so much possibility. You saw how when I was drawing the little creature and to do like some of the petals, I just did one single stroke for a petal. And it's the same with this brush. Like there's just so much that can be done that you don't really need very fine meticulous lines to get across. Huh? Oh, for what I use traditional? Yeah, I just primarily use the brush pen. Yeah. And the high-tech C, I showed the high-tech C. The high-tech C is, if anybody wants to come up, like, I think, what time are we at? Is it done?
1:36.
Okay, so at this point, we're like, done. If you guys need to run to anything else, you can. And if you guys want to talk or like look over any of the tools, you can come on up here. And if you have other questions too, you can come up. But yeah, thank you for coming.
Because we're quick.
I like it.
Okay, that means the everlasting.